I always thought that after 50, peace would begin. Silence, hot tea, my favorite blanket, a little gardening, and evenings with a book. But it all went wrong when one, small, act turned my life into a nightmare. After my divorce, which was a living hell, believe me, I stayed in the house that Jerry and I once bought together. He left me for some young blonde from the internet, and I was left with a 2-story house in the suburbs of Atlanta, some old furniture, and a lot of emotional scars. I was 56, and I thought, this is my time. I deserve it. Finally, no more roaches in my head, no more compromises, no more nights in tears. I started to clean up the house, rearranged it, even painted the kitchen my favorite mint color. I started baking pies, not for anyone else, but for myself. And I finally started to feel the taste of life. And then I got a phone call, my mother, a strict woman from the "it's the way it should be" generation, called at exactly 7 in the morning on a Saturday. I was still in my bathrobe, coffee in hand. "Cindy, listen. Casey is temporarily homeless. She has a little boy. You wouldn't leave them on the street, would you? Casey is my cousin. She's about 20 years younger than me. I haven't seen her in 10 years, if not more. Hey, she used to be the kid who was always breaking other people's toys at family parties. And as it turned out, she hadn't grown up at all. I tried to explain that I had just started building my life, that I needed some peace, and that I was tired myself. But the answer was instant. Cindy, this is family. Imagine if you were in her shoes. And so, as usual, I sighed and agreed, because that's how I was raised, to always please everyone, to be good girl. And Casey arrived 2 days later, without warning, without a gift, with a garbage bag for a suitcase and a toddler who screamed like an ambulance siren. "Hi, Aunt Cindy," she said, as if we had just met yesterday. My chest tightened. She came in right away, took off her shoes on the carpet, put her juice bottle on my wooden table without a stand, and turned on the TV, as if it was her home. I smiled, automatically, but inside I started to howl. The first few days I held on. A kid named Kevin made a mini apocalypse. For me, he painted the walls in the hallway with a marker, drowned the remote control in the toilet, and threw my favorite ficus on the floor, looking for treasures. Casey just laughed, and repeating, "He's just a kid, Auntie." She would leave dirty dishes in the kitchen, open all the cabinets as if looking for something of her own. Several times she took my last ice cream from the fridge without asking. I took her as she did laundry every day, clothes mine and the child's in my washing machine with my detergent, and she never asked if she could. I was silent because it was temporary. A week passed. I asked Carsling Stacey, "How are things going with your apartment search?" "It's the economy, Cindy. You've seen the rents, right? And Kevin needs daycare. I thought we'd stay a while." "Well, for now. You don't mind, do you?" I wanted to scream, but I didn't. And at the same second, a new message from my mom appeared. "You're doing a great job supporting your family. I'm proud of you." I was standing in my bathroom, holding the sink and looking in the mirror. My face was pale, eyes without shine, and only one question in my head. When exactly did I stop being the mistress of my house? Maybe when I allowed myself to be silent. Or maybe even earlier, when I allowed others to decide what was best for me. I turned off the water. I wiped the mirror, and put on that same smile again for the world. But inside, a storm was already brewing, and I did not know that it would get even worse, because a few days later another guest appeared in my house, and after that life was never the same again. In this episode, Cindy gradually loses control of her own life. Casey becomes more and more defiant, another relative appears, and Cindy begins to suspect that this is not an accident, but a planned game. Hospitality is when you open the door. A trap is when you can't close it. And here I was, sitting in my own home, in my own living room, on the edge of the couch, like a guest in someone's TV show. I was the only one left in my world, until the doorbell rang again. On Friday night, I was just about to relax, and I turned on my favorite program, covered my legs with a blanket, and then the doorbell rang. I thought, maybe my neighbor forgot something. But there on the doorstep was my Aunt Sharon. Yes, my mom's sister. Anna, the one who last saw me before I had gray hair. She was carrying a plastic bag of things in her hand, and her eyes were demanding. "Oh, Cindy, dear." She hugged me without waiting for my consent. "Hey, my roof is leaking, and you're all alone here. So much space." Before I could even open my mouth, she had already walked past and sat down on the same blanket I had just covered myself with. You know, in movies there are scenes like this. The main character slowly looks around, everything seems to slow down, and she realizes that something is wrong. That's exactly how I felt. Anna Casey was sitting on the floor with a bottle of cola in her hands. Her kid was running around with my pot on his head. And now my aunt, who had already taken off her shoes and turned on the news louder than the TV. My house was no longer mine, and I was no longer the owner. The next morning, Aunt Sharon, sprawled out at my kitchen table, said, "Listen, Cindy, you're home. It would be nice if you cooked something. Casey and I are tired, you know," and Casey nodding, "and it would be nice to clean up. It's been a mess since Kevin left. We'd help, but, well, you're better than that." At first I thought I'd misheard, but no, it was clear. I took a deep breath. "Oh, not," and again I silently took up the rag. I did not squeal. I didn't say anything, because this is all family, and you don't insult your family. That's how I was taught. That's how I lived half my life. And that was my biggest mistake. But, there is a limit. When you are asked to do something, it's one thing. When you are turned into a servant, it's another. And when you wake up in the middle of the night to the smell of other people, other smells, other habits in your house, something inside you starts to break down. I didn't feel at home anymore. And the worst part is that I didn't feel alive anymore. On Sunday, when I decided to clean up the garage a bit to be alone somewhere, I came across an old box of letters. There were envelopes from the 90s. From my first boyfriend, from friends with whom we used to dream of great things. There was a different me there. Young, alive, uncompromising. I was sitting on the cold floor, holding the yellowed sheet in my hands, and tears were rolling down my cheeks. And when did I lose myself? And will I ever find it again? That evening, Aunt Sharon spoking, Cindy, Casey, and I have been thinking. We could really use a second TV in our room. Maybe you could get us one. You live alone, you have a good pension. And I realized they weren't going to leave. They are here for a long time, and I am just a resource for them. A pocket. A maid. A simple, quiet, convenient woman who can be used. But something inside me was beginning to awaken. Anger. And a desire to not be silent anymore. In this episode, Cindy fully realizes that she has lost control of her own space. Then the life she has been building for decades now belongs to others. But inside her, the first spark of resistance is born. The worst thing is not being insulted. The worst thing is when you stop noticing that you are no longer there, that your place has been taken, your things have been moved, and yourself has been buried behind a cup of coffee you didn't even ask for. It's Saturday morning. This used to be my day. Silence, radio, newspaper, and the aroma of freshly ground coffee. I like to wake up slowly, go out to the backyard in my old bathrobe, and watch the sun lick the leaves. And now, Anna Casey's underwear is drying in my backyard. In my kitchen, someone is frying bacon, leaving greasy stains on the stove. And my TV is not playing my favorite classics, but cartoons that make my skull rattle. And I stood quietly by the bathroom door, holding a towel. And inside I could hear voices. Casey was there again, giving Kevin a bath. It's 10 in the morning. And again, I have nowhere to go. In my own house, I hadn't even noticed when they became in charge. Aunt Sharon started inviting guests, family. Of course. The kitchen turned into a passageway. The fridge was full of food I hadn't bought, and my name was heard less and less. You're bring. You're at home, do. Maybe you should go for a walk. The girls and I are going to watch a TV show. I obeyed, because I was afraid of conflict. I thought it wouldn't last long. But days turned into weeks. And my voice became quieter and quieter. One morning I stopped in front of the mirror. My hair was tousled, the robe on my shoulder was worn out. There are dark circles under my eyes that never existed before. And the woman looking at me was not the woman I had imagined. I used to be a fire. I was the one who led the family, kept everyone afloat. I was the hostess. And now, I'm just Aunt Cindy who washes the dishes after everyone has eaten. The one who is older and has to help. At that moment, something clicked. No, not anger. Not yet. But the first question, when did I lose myself? And can I ever get it back? That same day, I tried to take a shower. For the first time in a week, without rushing. But there was none of my gel on the shelf. The only Casey's pink jars, her son's toys, and smells that had nothing to do with my world. I came out soaking wet in a bathrobe with a towel over my head, and I saw Sharon sitting in my chair, my knitting in hand. "Oh, do you mind? I'm going to do a little bit of knitting." "It was in the closet," she said without even looking at. I didn't answer. I just passed by like a shadow. In the evening, I went to my bedroom for a little peace, just a couple of minutes of silence, and I froze. Casey's clothes were laid out on my bed, and she was sorting her clothes, and her son was playing with my old phone, which I kept in a drawer as a memento. "Mom, look, she has more pictures." The boy laughed. Photos, my past, my memory, my life. Casey didn't even apologize. She just threw it away. "No one calls you anyway. Why do you need an old phone?" I stood there, clutching the doorknob, and something crunched inside me again. This time it was louder. That night I couldn't sleep for a long time. The AI was silent. I was thinking. I listened to someone laughing in my house, to the boy banging his toys on the walls, to my aunt walking around in the slippers I had once bought for myself. And then I took a piece of paper. I sat down, and I wrote just one sentence. "I am no longer the boss of my house." Below it, I wrote another, "But I can become one again." The next morning I got up before everyone else, and for the first time in a long time, I cooked breakfast just for me. I sat down at the table and ate slowly, and listened to the silence. When they woke up, I was already on the doorstep with a bag in my hands. "Where are you going?" My aunt asked. I looked her in the eyes. "I'm going out, but don't worry, I'll be back soon, and maybe it will be a different one." And I went out. I took the first step. Toward myself. In this episode, Cindy faces a new level of audacity. What started as temporary help turns into full-fledged enslavement. And for the first time, she doesn't just feel resentful, she begins to boil over inside. Sometimes it seems that the bottom has already been reached, that there is nowhere lower. And then there is a knock from the inside, and you realize they haven't even started yet. I returned home in the late afternoon. I walked a few blocks, just breathing in the air without the smell of someone else's perfume and microwave popcorn. And then, opening the door, I stepped through the threshold. Into someone else's territory. The kitchen was a mess. Empty packages, half-eaten sausages on the table, spilled Coke on the floor. In the living room, there were 2 pairs of legs on the Aunt Sharon and Casey stretched out like they were at home. "Oh, you're here already." Casey said without even looking up. "No, how are you or where have you been?" "Just the fact I'm back." And that meant I could continue to use it. The next morning I was greeted by a list. A real one, in black and white, attached to the fridge with a magnet. For the week. Sharon signed it. And below it, clean the bathroom on Monday and Friday, wash bedding twice a week, prepare dinner every day at 6, spend at least an hour with Kevin so that Casey can rest. At first I thought it was a joke. But then I saw that they were already living by this regimen. Because the next day, Sharon said it bluntly, "Tia is not ready." You saw the list. My whole life has come down to being comfortable. To be quiet. Act to clean up after them. Cooking for them. Listening to, "I'm tired." From a young, healthy woman who spends all day scrolling through tweets and telling me how hard it is to be a mom. And me, in my 60s, have to hug my child when he hits his head against the walls. I have to wash their dishes because Casey is a single mom. It's hard for her. And Aunt Sharon even says that it's so good for me to get some movement in my old age. But one day changed everything. It was a Wednesday. I had just come back from the store, carrying heavy bags. I had bought groceries because the fridge was empty again. And as soon as I walked in, Sharon slammed the pot. "Didn't you buy the soy milk again? I asked you to. And I can't have lactose." And that's when it came out. The voice was mine, shy but real. "Have you ever bought anything at all? Even a stick of butter or soap? This is my house, and I don't have to serve you." The room fell silent. Even Kevin stopped jumping on the couch. For the first time in a month, everyone was silent. And of course, Sharon was the first to speak. "Oh yeah, so we're bothering you. And who supported you after the divorce? Who helped you when you were abandoned?" Casey just played along, pressing her lips into a lying mom's right. "We are family, and you just want to get rid of us." I stood there, and there was something like a storm inside me. I wanted to scream. It wasn't you who supported me, it was me who supported everyone all my life. But I didn't. I just went out to the backyard and sat on an old bench. There on the bench I remembered my husband left because he was tired of living someone else's life. And instead of regaining my own, I started to save the lives of others. I saved, supported, fed, kept silent, worked. And when I became unnecessary, I was left alone. And now I am giving my last to those who do not even say thank you. That evening I took that list from the wall. I tore it up. Slowly, with pleasure. And for the first time in a long time, I went to bed before 11 without ironing any shirts or sheets. What will happen next? I don't know. But I will not be silent anymore. I won't clean up after being neglected. And I will not live to be convenient. Because when you are beaten from the inside, you either have to swallow the poison or spit it out. I choose the latter. In this episode, Cindy reveals the first cracks in her family's facade. What looked like laziness and arrogance turns out to be even deeper, involving manipulation, money, and lies. Sometimes the greatest betrayal is not in actions, but in motives. When you realize that you are not just being used, you are being played. And this game is dirty. The morning after the torn list, I woke up earlier than usual. The kitchen was quiet. Too quiet. For the first time in a week, it didn't smell like burnt toast and baby cream. I decided to seize the moment. I made coffee, sat on the porch, and for the first time in a long time allowed myself to be at peace. But it didn't last long. Sharon showed up with a "none of your business" expression, but something was wrong. She was on the phone, and I caught a few words. Everything is going according to plan. She doesn't suspect anything. A little more time and everything will be ours. Ours. The plan, it was as if someone had hit me, but I went inside silently, and for the first time I thought maybe this is not just rudeness. I started to pay attention, the way to the little things. The way Casey hides envelopes from the mail. How Sharon snoops around my room at night, thinking I'm asleep. How the phone goes dead every time I walk in. One day I overheard them talking. Sharon asked did you take over everything? And Casey replied, almost. But she can't know anything until April. Then it's official. What's official? When? I sat in my bedroom, clenching my fists, and my heart was beating like a drum. They were up to something. At night, when everyone was asleep, I went to my office. I opened a drawer where I kept old documents, papers for the house, insurance, a will. Some documents were missing, and some were changed. Signatures have been forged. The date was changed. My house was already at a joint discussion of the transfer of use rights, registered as temporary housing for family members in need of assistance. And all of this was initiated by Casey. The signature is forged, and it was done with the help of Sharon, who used to work for the municipality and knew how to get around the bureaucracy. The next morning, I was no longer silent. In the kitchen, when everyone was gathered, I put the copies of the documents in front of them. "What is this?" I asked, looking straight into Sharon's eyes. Sharon shook her head. Casey bit her lip. "You ruined everything!" Casey burst out. "We just wanted stability." "You're alone. What do you need a big house for?" My voice was shaky but firm. Sharon sighed. "It's not yours anymore, Cindy. You told your mom you didn't know what to do with your life. She's the one who offered to help my mom. They've dragged my mom into this. She's 82. She's naive and trusting, and they used her as a clue. It's premeditated. It's all about the details. This care, help, it was all a plan. They did not come to live temporarily. They did not need protection. They came for prey. And I was the prey." Casey went on. You've always been alone. And we're your family. So why do you act like we're the enemy? Because family isn't people who come when you're feeling good. Family is those who don't go through your things while you're sleeping. Doesn't forge documents. Does not steal your roof over your head. That night I packed my things. But not my things. "There's, you have 24 hours. I said, "Either you leave or I will. But if I leave, the police will be the next to come here." They were silent. They didn't even ask me to leave. Because they knew I had found out. I realized the game. And I am no longer a piece on their chessboard. But the viewer wonders what happens next. Will they leave? Or will they make a new move? Because if there's one thing I've learned, people like them don't go down without a fight. When you are erased from your life, you either submit or explode. I chose the latter. That night I couldn't sleep. The suitcases were by the door, but no one touched them. There was a deafening silence in the air, as if before a storm. Casey did not leave the room. Sharon only glanced up when I passed by. But I could see they were panicking. They weren't used to me saying no. I went to my room, made myself some chamomile tea, sat down in a chair and just breathed. But my hands were still shaking. Anger, resentment, disappointment, everything was mixed. And suddenly I realized it's not just about the house. It's about me, about all those years of silence. About all the, "It's okay, I can handle it," when I should have screamed. And I remembered how at 35 I was left alone with a little daughter and loans. How I kept silent when my ex-husband disappeared with the money, leaving me with only debts and stains on my reputation. How at 48, when my mother was hospitalized, I sold my car, but didn't tell anyone because I'm strong. Like when I was 15, no one asked me, "How are you?" And I didn't even notice that it was abnormal. And now, was I supposed to sacrifice everything I had once again just because the family needs it? No more. In the morning I got up early, put on a robe, turned on the coffee maker, and waited. At 6:45, Sharon appeared as usual to point out that we need to buy more decaf coffee. But this time she froze in place because I was already standing there with my speech ready. "But now you listen to me." She wanted to say something, but I raised my hand. "You both didn't come here for help. You came to take away, and when you couldn't do it quietly, you started playing family. But I'm not silent anymore, and I'm not afraid anymore. Iga? Cindy, why are you dramatizing this?" She began. "And you, Sharon," I interrupted. "Tell me better, how will you explain the fake documents to the police? You still have connections in the real estate department, right? You can call them back." Her face turned gray. She was silent. And at that moment I knew I had won the first round. But it was only the beginning. The real attack was yet to come, and not from them. Around noon my phone rang. The screen read Mom. I exhaled and answered. "Daughter." My voice was quiet, as if tired. "What's going on there?" They had already gotten to her. And of course they put it their way. That I had disgraced Casey, that I had kicked my family out, that I had left my granddaughter homeless. Hook words that sound like a sin to an elderly mother. I talked to her for almost an hour. I explained everything, calmly, without accusations, just the truth. About the forged papers, about the manipulations, about how it all made me feel. And, surprisingly, she was silent. Only at the end did she say anything. I didn't know. I'm sorry I made you let them in. I hung up the phone, and for the first time in a long time I felt like I was in control of my own life again. I'm no longer a soft pillow to wipe my feet on. I am not a quiet shadow that disappears as soon as someone is uncomfortable, and I am a woman who is tired of being silent. And if I have to, I will go to court. I am ready. In the evening, I gathered them both in the living room again. No shouting, just the facts. You have 1 day left. Tomorrow at 8 in the morning, I'm filing a statement. I have witnesses, copies of documents, and my lawyer is ready. Sharon was silent. Casey started to cry. No more tears, I said, because I cried for all of you. Because I've cried for all of you. That's enough. I thought they'd give up. But in the morning, instead of packing my bags, I found a note in the kitchen. Just one sentence, you will regret this. And at that moment I realized that this was not the end. This is just another level of the game, and maybe now it's more dangerous. In this episode, Cindy faces a new challenge. Her own health is at risk. Fatigue, fear, and insomnia, everything she's ignored for so long, are coming back with a vengeance. And this is no longer just a drama, it's a silent catastrophe. When the body whispers, you don't hear. When it screams, it's too late. Ella, I thought that only the actions of others could break you. But sometimes it's your own heart that breaks you. After that night with the note, I hardly slept. And I woke up in a cold sweat, checked the door, listened for someone rustling in the kitchen. I kept hearing one phrase in my head, "You'll regret it." During the day, I cleaned, cooked, called my lawyer, and sent letters on automatic. I was holding on as if I were on a hook that was about to break. But my body could not stand it. My heart was pounding madly, then suddenly stopped for a few seconds. My fingers were trembling, my hands were cold, and my thoughts were like a fog. The first time I had a seizure was in a supermarket. I was just standing by the milk rack when I suddenly felt the world start to shake. My heart was like a hammer. It became difficult to breathe. And then, as if the world had shrunk, I could not hear anyone, only noise in my ears. I fell to my knees right between the trolleys. Someone was calling for help. I heard a woman screaming, "She's sick." And there was only one thing in my head, I was dying. At the hospital, they gave me an intravenous drip and made a cardiogram. No, the conclusion, panic attack. Overwork, high level of stress. A young doctor sat down across from me, looked me straight in the eye and said, "Cindy, your body is no longer carrying someone else's burden. You need to stop. Otherwise, next time it not be a panic attack. It could be a heart attack." These words were like ice on my back. Because I suddenly realized I'm not really immortal. I am not a robot, and I'm not 25 anymore, I am 61, and I have never lived for myself. When I returned home, I saw him for the first time as he really was: no emotions, no anger, no struggle, just empty. The silence was not peace, it was emptiness. Casey and Sharon were home, but they were quiet, as if they had learned something about me, or maybe they just sensed that I wasn't myself anymore. I locked myself in my room, and I cried. Not quietly, not neatly, but like a child who doesn't know who to go to anymore, because the whole struggle had consumed my strength. I drove fear out of the house, but I let it in. 2 days later, I decided to call a therapist recommended by a friend. Her name was Rebecca. Her voice was calm and warm. "You've been strong for a long time," she said. "But the strong also have the right to fall. And Cindy, sometimes what we call love of family is really a habit of self-sacrifice." These words stuck with me. I realized for decades I had been living in the mode of surviving, supporting, accepting, but not live. I started writing in my notebook about everything: fear, fatigue, betrayal. Each page was like a cleansing. I was not yet ready to go to court or throw them out of the house, but I was ready to treat myself. Because the real fight does not begin in court or in the living room. When it begins in you when you finally see yourself not as a shadow, but as a person. When I finally decided to tell Casey that I needed to rest, she rolled her eyes. So now you're playing the sicko. Jesus, Grandma, this is too much. That hurt more than anything. Because it was her I was saving. It was for her that I opened the door. She, of all people, should have known what it was like to be afraid and have no one to lean on. Enea, I looked her straight in the eye and said, if you don't realize that I am on the edge, then maybe you are the edge. At night, I was sitting in the kitchen with hot tea. Only the light from the lamp, the slowly ticking clock, and the soft hum of the refrigerator. I touched my chest. There was still a tingling there, but it was no longer fear. It was the memory of him, and a warning. Burnout is not just fatigue. It's when you dissolve into other people's problems so much that you no longer see yourself. But maybe this is the first step to a new life. Because in episode 8, I will say yes to myself for the first time, and to them no. In this episode, the protagonist decides to stop being afraid and seeks legal aid for the first time. Her goal is to become the mistress of her life again, and she finally begins to see the light at the end of the tunnel. You think you have no choice until you know your rights. And then a lawyer comes along and the world turns upside down, but not by force, but with knowledge. The morning after the fight with Casey, I woke up different. For the first time in months, not from the noise, not from stress, not from screaming, but from an inner voice, quiet but clear. You are not a prisoner. You are the hostess. Start acting. I made myself a cup of coffee slowly. Cinnamon, like I used to before all this catastrophe. I opened and, while the kitchen was silent, I opened my laptop and typed in a search, real estate lawyer, Texas. His name was Harold. 68 years old. He wore an embroidered shirt under his jacket, a wise smile, and a calmness in his voice that I missed so much. He was not like those who look down on you. Harold spoke simply. Don't have to tolerate the intrusion, he said. You own the house. You have every right to determine who lives here and who does not. And most importantly, you are not alone. He looked at the documents carefully, at everything from the insurance to the purchase. And then he looked up. Cindy, I'm going to be blunt. Your niece and her mother are breaking the law. You have every reason to evict them. No threats, no conflicts. It's legal. But I didn't know what to say. A mom. Your mother has no right to control your life, even if she means well. You know what I'm telling you. It's time to stop being comfortable. We decided to start softly. Harold prepared a formal letter, a notice of intent to terminate their temporary residence. The letter was strict but polite. He emphasized the deadline of 30 days. This is the first step, he said. They will react, perhaps with anger. But not from a position of power, because now you are not just a relative. You are a party with a lawyer. When I put the letter on the kitchen table, Casey was sitting there with her phone on. When she saw the paper, she opened it, and she was silent for 5 long seconds, and then she exploded. Are you kidding me? Are you trying to get me fired? Me? After everything I've done? After I left everything to be here? I stood up straight. My hands were shaking, but I didn't stoop. I just said, this is my home, and I have the right to decide who lives here. You had a month to find a job, but instead you disrespected me every day. Casey burst into tears, not sincerely, but loudly for show. But this time I didn't give in. For the first time I stood firm. The phone rang in the evening. Mom, how could you? It's my family. They're in trouble. Mom, I was in the hospital because of a nervous breakdown. I was humiliated every day. That's not family. They're parasites. You're selfish. And you look in the mirror. And I was the first one to hang up the phone. 3 days later, Casey stopped talking to me. Sharon disappeared from the house for the whole day. It was quiet, almost scary. But I wasn't afraid. I sat on the porch with a warm blanket, staring at the sky. Next to me was a cup of tea and a copy of Harold's letter. I had made my choice. And then, when it seemed that I had finally taken control of my life, a new one began. The AI saw Sharon through the window. She was talking to someone near the car, a young man with documents in his hands. I couldn't hear, but I saw her hand him a picture of my house. Something was brewing, and I could feel it. Stop that you think once you take the first step, everything is over. No, it's not, because sometimes when you start fighting for yourself, those who are used to using you start preparing to stab you in the back. In this episode, emotions reach a peak. Cindy faces a final test. Either she finally frees her life or allows herself to be dragged into a new cycle of neglect, pain, and loss. There are moments in life when the door cannot be left half open. Either you walk in or you leave forever. After talking to my lawyer and receiving the warning letter, the house seemed to stand still. No tantrums, no screaming. Casey was silent. Sharon disappeared for a few days. I felt calm, but not for long. A storm that is too quiet is always the worst. One morning the doorbell rang. A young man in uniform introduced himself as a housing inspector. He told me that a complaint had been filed against my house, that I was allegedly keeping several people without heating, hot water, and food. I was almost speechless. It was a blow, and I knew where it came from. "It's all fiction," I said calmly. "Come and see for yourself." The inspector came out of the house, apologized, but the residue remained. It was not just a challenge, it was a warning. "We have not given up yet." The same day, my mom called. Her voice was not soft, but metallic. "I talked to your aunt. She is very upset. She says you want to leave them on the street." "Mom, I can't take it anymore. And if you do, don't you dare call me ever again. You're not my daughter anymore." I was twisted inside. I grew up trying to please her. My whole life was a circle of seeking approval. And now she was giving me the most terrible choicing. It was either them or me. In the evening, I found papers on the kitchen table. Photocopies, with pen marks. Sharon had left them there on purpose. And they were not simple. It turned out that a few years ago, when I signed a power of attorney for the house renovation, my mother had rewritten some rights to part of the property without my knowledge, to herself. And now, using these old documents, Sharon was preparing for a lawsuit, demanding compensation for living there. This was not revenge. It was a robbery. I sat on the porch with my head in my hands. Again, I felt a sense of failure, hopelessness, despair. And then, like a miracle, a neighbor, Mrs. Pelham, came over. "I saw their lawyer, and I know what they are preparing against you. But listen to me, Cindy. I'm here for you. I'll go to court if I have to. I'll testify about how they've been abusing you. And I'm not the only one. I couldn't help myself." I burst into tears right in front of her. Because I suddenly remembered not everyone in this world is a user. There are those who see and feel. That night I did not sleep. I replayed everything from the first day my mom said, "Take it. It's your own blood." And to this moment when I am one step away from losing everything. And I finally realized sometimes you have to lose something to save yourself. The same morning I went to Harold and said, "Let's file for a forced eviction. And let's prepare a counterclaim." He nodded silently. "You've made your choice," he said. "Now I'll take care of the rest." I returned home. I sat down in the living room. Sharon appeared. "So you've decided to go to war? Good." He get ready. We can't answer. Because it wasn't about war anymore. It was about freedom. Casey packed her bags in silence. There was nothing between us anymore, no anger, no pain. Only silence. And when the door closed behind them, I realized that this was not a victory. It was a loss. But a right one. Because it is only by losing what is superfluous that we find ourselves. But it leaves behind questions that do not give rest, hints of what is to come, and most importantly, the feeling that life is just beginning. Because true purification does not come in one moment, but in a wave. When it seems that everything is over, this is the most dangerous moment. Because it is then that the truth crawls out from under the dust of the past and changes everything we thought we knew. The next morning I woke up without an alarm. For the first time in a long time, the house was quiet. No one was yelling, slamming doors, scolding me for the coffee is wrong. Or, the washing machine is too loud. I drank my morning coffee slowly from the balcony and cherished every minute of freedom. But something was wrong. An uneasiness sat in the corner of my heart, as if I knew that was not all. In the afternoon mail I found a beige envelope. It had no return address. Inside were just a few sheets of paper and a photo. The first photo was of me, an 8-year-old, sitting on a bench with my mom. But next to us is a man I didn't know. The second photo is of my mother with him in an embrace. The signature on the back reads, "Cindy must not find out." The sheets were from the notary. The record is from 98, and there, in black and white, I did not have one father, as I had been told all my life. This man was my real father. And my mother, instead of telling me the truth, erased him from my life. I held these documents and couldn't breathe, but air all my memories false. But does that explain her harshness towards me all my life, her attempt to make me a convenient, silent daughter who doesn't ask anything? I realized one thing: my home was not just a trap because of Sharon. It was a trap built long ago. My mother raised me in fear lest I become like the man she once loved but never forgave. The next day I got a call from Harold. "Cindy, we have a problem. Sharon has filed an appeal. She's trying to stop the eviction. And this time she's enlisted the help of your mom." It was like a bad TV show. Every time I thought it was over, they came back even more aggressive. But this time I didn't cry. I wasn't afraid. Something was broken in me, and at the same time something was healed. I said, "Let them. I will meet them in court." But after that, I had no contact. Not even family ties. No contact at all. The meeting in court was cold. My mom sat with the same icy posture she used to punish me with as a child. She looked past me. Sharon talked about cruelty, being thrown out on the street, about emotional abuse from me, and I might have doubted it again if not for the words of the lawyer on my side. We have testimonies from neighbors, photos, video, and a full list of violations by Sharon, and voicemail recordings. And when they turned on the audio of Sharon speaking, "She's going to regret letting us in. We'll make her crazy." I saw my mom tilt her head, for the first time without pride. When it was over, I went up to my mom. She didn't get up. Do you know what hurts the most? Not that you helped them. It's that you never ask, "Ed, how are you, Cindy? Are you happy?" She didn't say anything. "Okay," I said. "I don't have any more questions for you." And she left. In a week passed. Then another. I lived in silence. I read books, listened to vinyl. I cooked what I wanted to cook. And at some point, for the first time in many years, I caught myself thinking, I am living. I am not surviving. And then, the one call, an unknown number. I answered it. Cindy. It's about the inheritance. Your father, Andrew Grayson, left you a house in Vermont. And a letter. I shook. He's alive. He died a month ago. But he knew about you. And he hoped you'd find out the truth someday. I went to Vermont. Old house. An old post office. And an envelope with a letter. I was not allowed to be your father. But I believe that someday you would find me. And if you are reading this, then you survived. And now you can start all over again, without the shadow of the past. Live. Just live. I closed my eyes. The air was fresh, new. And although my story had come to an end, I knew that there was another one ahead. Another me, another life. Thank you for being with me in this story. Subscribe to the channel. There are even more vital, deep, and unexpected stories ahead. Your comments and impressions are like air to my heart. See you soon.